we want to take you to another level where we can just discuss how you can find evidence. So if you know what evidence is, and you know that in your field, this is considered evidence and this is not considered evidence. You also know that there are levels of evidence, and that when you are drawing on some of these evidence to make your argument, stick to the highest level, the evidence that is at the highest, the top level. How do you look for that evidence? So we want to take you to looking for evidence or literature searching. And I think I want to introduce Hiba here to just take us through that bit.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Robert, for that insightful discussion. Right, so I would also want to have a bit of insight into people's experiences. So can we have in the chat box, the question says, how experienced are you with searching for evidence? So if you think you are very experienced in searching for evidence, put in a 1. If you have no experience, put in 3. If you think you have some sort of experience, put in 2 in the chat box. Okay. Right. I see a bit of 1s and 2s. I've not opened the chat box yet, but I just see them popping up.
I can monitor. I can.
Yeah. Can you
for you? Hiba, yes.
Please do that for me.
Yes. So what I've seen so far, I'll just tell you the modal one. So many people have responded to. So most people have responded to 2, so have got some experience.
Some experience, okay.
Indicated to have some experience.
Okay.
I think it's only one person who has indicated that they've got very much experience.
Okay. Which, well, thank you. Thanks for that feedback. It's good to know where people are. And so for people who have some experience, I'm hoping that by the end of this session, you would have picked 1 or 2 things to help you improve on your skills. For the one who hasn't got any experience, I'll still try and do it such that before you leave, you would have, you pick 1 or 2 things that you can use in starting to do searches. Now I have a second question. How about PICO searching? Are people, first of all, those who say they have some sort of experience, how experienced are you with PICO searching? If you have so much, 1, okay, I see 0. If you have some experience, 2, and if you have nothing at all, 3, with PICO searching. It's possible that some people might not know what it is, so you can just put 3 if you don't know what it is as well.
So I can update you, Hiba, on the responses. It seems almost everyone who's responded so far saying they've not heard of PICO. It's got no experience with PICO.
Okay. Thanks for the feedback. I'm glad to know that, so I know how to go about this session. Okay, so before I tell you about what PICO is, if you are going to undertake any search, you're searching for literature from whatever database, depending on your discipline, it is very important that you prepare. Preparation is key. You need to prepare. With everything else, you need to prepare first. And what does preparation mean in literature searching? First of all, you need to have a well-structured question. Before you undertake a literature search, you're doing an assessment or you're doing your dissertation, you need to have a question, or some people just have it in the form of an objective, whatever it is. It needs to be well structured. And I'm going to be giving you examples as we go along. Okay. So what PICO does, it helps you to break down the question into concepts, to help you with your searches. So it helps you to break your research question or your objective or your aim or whatever you are trying to look for, break it down into concepts. You know, it's these concepts that is going to help you to do your search. Okay. Now, so what does PICO stand for before I go on? P, next slide, please. P stands for population, and I need to state that it's often used in the biomedical sciences, public health, you know, in other disciplines, they might have different synonyms, okay? But it's the same concept, okay? So if you think that this is not really applying to you, you can just apply the concept or, you know, yeah, to your field or your discipline, okay? So the P stands for population, your I, or condition, depending on what you are looking at. The I stands for your intervention. The C stands for, you know, comparison. And then the O stands for an outcome. Now, to break this further, rather than use, I have an example, but I was wondering if anyone is willing to volunteer a research question, or, you know, and if anyone is doing a dissertation and has a research question that they want us to use as an example, any question at all, in the chat box. Sorry to put people on the spot, but I am a nutritionist, so I tend to be very biased towards nutrition. So if anyone has something that is more generic, you know, a research question in mind, can you volunteer and we use that to do the search? If not, I'll go on with my nutrition example.
I mean, there's a great opportunity to participants. If you have a topic that you want to really search literature on for either an assignment or research, this is a good opportunity to bring it, and you have a taster on how to actually search for literature on that topic. So yes, please seize the opportunity. You can make one up as well if you think.
One up. Whenever I attend, you know, things like that, I always volunteer my stuff because people help me to break it down. Okay, I've seen one.
Fantastic.
Here.
So one has come up.
Good.
Do you want me to read it out to you? Or
yes, please. Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. So yes. Okay. So Mohammed, you're the first person, so we're just gonna go with yours.
Yeah.
So effects. Oh, there are two. Sorry, Stephen. Mohammed has beaten you to it. So effects of IFA supplementation.
Effects of IFA supplementation, yeah.
On HB levels of pregnant women in Yendi Hospital.
HB levels of pregnant women in Yendi Hospital.
Yendi Hospital.
Perfect. Can you also read the second one to me? I'll use the first one, but I want to hear what's in the second one.
Well, there is a second and a third.
Okay.
Okay, but I'll read the second one.
Yeah.
To assess the prevalence of diarrhea disease among children aged 6 to 23 months.
Oh, good. The reason why I was asking for the second one is because I was hoping that someone will come up with an example that is not well structured. So far, these two examples are very structured. You know, in the first slide, I said that preparation is key. And for you to do a good search, you need a well-structured question. And so far, all these two questions are well-structured. I would explain why.
I've got three and four, just in case.
Okay. Can you give me an example of a question that seems not really structured? Just.
I've got no idea what well-structured is.
Okay, all right.
I can only read 3 and 4, and you decide.
Okay, no, let's leave that. I'll just give one example from the top of my head. So let's go back to the first one. So when you're using PICO, because I like the first example, you think about it. You look at your question, and then you break it into concepts. So let's break that first question into concepts. What do you think is the population in that question? I'm throwing it out to you. Effects of IFA supplements on HB levels of pregnant women in Yendi. What is the population we are looking at? Anyone, you can chat in. What is pregnant women? So that would be your first concept. Okay, so you write that down as your first concept. Now, in terms of intervention, what is the intervention?
I think this is an opportunity for you guys to I mean, this is more like a practical session. So if I were you, I'd take advantage of it and then take my research topic and just start following.
What is the intervention here? IFA supplementation. Yes, I see that here. That is good. Now, what is the other PICO concept? It's the comparison. Now, I need to state here that even though we say PICO, it is not every research question that you definitely have to have those 4 concepts. Depending on what you have, you might not have a comparator or comparison. So in this question, effects of IFA supplementation on HB levels, we don't have a comparison. If the question was to look at, comparing IFA supplementation with another thing, can you think of another supplement or something else? Then we could have had that as our comparison. Do you understand? So we don't have a comparison here. Do we have an outcome in this one? It is not very obvious, but, some people could say health, but again, if it's not in the question, it's fine. We could just do with pregnant women, IFA supplement, HB levels. Okay, yeah, HB levels.
Yeah, HB levels is the outcome.
Yes. So that's it. Okay, thank you very much. So we have 3 concepts. We don't have 4 here. Okay, so we are using this. We're going to use this as our case study. What you do is that you write this out, these key concepts, and then start finding synonyms for pregnant women. Okay, so what do you think people would have used to describe pregnant women in the research, in literature? You sit down, you could think about it, you do a mind map and just start thinking, or you could go to Google, just look around for other words that people would have used for pregnant women. From the top of our heads, what are some of the other ways we can describe pregnant women? Because we don't have much time, some of them are just women. Some people could just have women there. Some people could say women of reproductive age. There's so many ways. Just think broadly of anything that could capture that concept of pregnancy. Okay.
Gestation women.
Good. Gestation women. Some people could even women attending A and C. Good.
Yeah.
Women attending A and C. You could even widen it to breastfeeding women. Just think of concepts that you think or words that are synonymous to what you are looking for. Okay. Then we go to the second concept. So this is how you do for every search you are doing. So the second concept is what? IFA supplementation. What are the other synonyms for IFA supplementation? I'm not sure I know what IFA is.
I don't know what IFA is.
Can you please tell us what it is? IFA supplementation.
Iron
folic acid.
Okay. Oh, iron folic acid. Okay, iron folic acid. Okay. Can we think of other synonyms that we could use for IFA? Anything at all?
Supplements.
Supplements is fine. Yeah, supplements could do. Supplements is fine. Anything else? So this is where you might want to look at other papers to see, because some of them you can't just think about it, see how multivitamin, yes, that would also do. So multivitamin, yeah. So you might want to do a bit more work by looking at other papers to see what other terms they have there, okay? So you get a way you go about it. Let's go to the next one, which is what? HB levels. How is HB levels known? What other synonyms do we have for HB levels? Anybody? Blood levels.
Blood levels, yeah.
Blood levels. Anemia test. Okay, so blood levels. Anemia test, yes. So you think, make a comprehensive list, or just as a few or more, depending on what you are looking for. Okay, so just do that and then put them down. I need to stress again that you don't have to go through all 4. Depending on your question, you might not need to break it into 4 concepts. You might need 3 or 2. Okay, so I gave an example here that is social media effective for public health education? Here, just 2 concepts: social media, public health education. Okay, you don't have to. Sometimes we actually also say PICO, so there's a T there. So you might want to add another concept that has to do with time. Okay, and I mentioned this, I'm saying it again. So there are other acronyms there's another one known as SPHERE, but it's the same concept. It's
Yeah.
just breaking down your topic into key concepts and then finding synonyms of these key concepts. That is the first step in doing.
So
any kind
Hiba,
of-
they
yeah.
are. Let me just name a few. So there are spider. There's one that is spider. There's spice,
So
and
there's
then you've mentioned spear already.
yeah.
So yes, and then there's eclipse.
Okay. So depending on your discipline, spider might be more appropriate for you to use. So just look at what spider stands for, what does sphere stand for, what does PICO stand for, and break down your research question into those concepts. Yes, please, Sandra.
And just to point out that at certain times the PICO takes other variants such as POs. So it becomes PEO.
Okay.
Sometimes with S. So the intervention usually is the same as the exposure. So sometimes it's replaced. And I think PEOs usually is more for qualitative research, where most, of course, as you imagine, qualitative research, you don't normally have an outcome.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
I just wanted to add also that the spider, sometimes you may be looking for a literature that necessarily is not an intervention-based paper. And so you probably be looking at the design type or the evaluation. So SPIDER stands for the sample. The PI stands for the interest, the phenomenon of interest, what you are interested in. And then you have the D, which is the design, and the E is evaluation, and then R is the research type. And then I think Sandra has just talked about qualitative, whether you are looking for only qualitative evidence or you are looking for quantitative evidence.
Okay.
So this will help you. Yes.
It helps. So this is the first step to doing any research, literature search. When I talked about making sure you have a structured question, I don't think I have an example. If you don't have a structured question, you just have anything that is not really focused, it will be difficult for you to break down your question into these key concepts. Okay. And if it's like that, you're not going to get any good results from your search. And that is why it is important that right from the onset, your question is properly structured. Yeah, can I go to
can I just add one thing before you move?
Yeah.
I think when we used to be students, I think in for example, I completed UDS years ago. What we used to do is you just go on Google and then you just type something on the topic that you have. And then anything that comes up, you use it to write your literature, or you rely on books. The world has changed. The academic world has changed such that you need to embrace the change that has come. So because of technology, we've advanced, that you just don't search for literature by just Googling. Yeah. So you need to systematically go through the process. And I think this is what Hiba is talking about.
Yes. Yeah. I realize that we don't have much time, but I'll try and take us through that. Can we go to the next slide, please? I also wanted to just mention that, as you know, there are so many databases, so you should know what your discipline is and which ones might be relevant to you. So I put a few examples here. So those of us in the biomedical science, public health and all that, we tend to use a lot of Ovid Medline, M-Base. People in nursing use M-Care. Psychology, we use PsycInfo. So you need to find out which databases are relevant to your discipline. Yep. Next one, please. Next slide. Now, next one, please. So, okay, so this is an example of what I meant by having a focused question. So is virtual teaching better for adults than children? What is the best mode of teaching children? If you have a question like, what is the best mode of teaching children? You won't be able to break this down into those key concepts that I spoke about. Which one is going to be your phenomenon of interest, which one is, so it's very important that all the time your questions are really structured. I think I'll just go on to starting the search. Okay, yes. So this was my own example that I had, but we've done one, so I won't take you through this. I just need to mention that once you have your synonyms, you could use, truncation. What we have here is an asterisk. So if you were talking about supplementation, you could shorten it with supplement, put this truncation here, and then the search will bring out all the words that are related to supplement. So supplementation is usually used when the word has plural words and you don't want to put all 2 words in there. Okay, so you just put this there and it will bring out all other words that are, you know, the plural form of the words, but words that are similar to that. Okay, if I'm making sense. And then usually this is what you do in the search. So for one key concept, so if for that concept of multivitamin HB level, no, let me use one, multivitamin, what were the other synonyms? Please remind me. IFA supplementation, you know, you use an or. So within one row, so for one concept, because you are talking about similar words, you make sure you use an or. I'm going to show you how that is done. And then you use an or for each of these. So if you come to the second concept, you use an or for all the words. And then once you are done with that, you use an and to combine that. Okay, let me go live now and see if I can show you what I'm talking about. Hopefully.
So Iba, whilst you go on live, let me just add something.
Okay.
So if you develop your, this is what we call the search strategy. I think Hiba has just put it there. So you have your population, which is Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, and then she's just talked about supplementation, fortification, fortified foods, and then she said you can use truncations. Sometimes when you are searching inside the database, there are words there that it will allow you to select. If you have forgotten that, if you've forgotten some of the synonyms, you can find the synonyms in the database. So if you put the words there, it will suggest some synonyms for you, and then you can add them to it.
Yeah, thank you, Robert.
Once you demonstrate, they will see it. Yeah.
Yeah. I just hope that this technology doesn't fail me today. 1 second. Almost there now. I had it open, but because of the time, I think it just...
I need to stop sharing this, Hiba.
Yeah, you need to stop sharing and I'll share from my end.
Please, you can type your questions. If you have any burning question, please type it for us, and then we can try to answer it.
Yeah. Can you see my screen now?
A big hooray today, Hiba. It's working today.
It's worked. No, let's not get excited too fast. Let's try it first. Okay, so let's use that example that I was given. Can you remind me of some of the I didn't write it down, so please, the one who volunteered your concept, can we write some of the words? I do remember.
Yeah, but can you use your own, so that after that people can use their own words?
Just remind me what I have on my slide, because people will get it.
So we have population being Africa.
Okay, so if your population is Africa, you could start.
The setting is Africa.
Africa, okay, the setting, yeah. So because I've been doing this, you see, it comes up with all the other words. So I'll just take that. You put that in. I'll show you. Let me go to search history. So sorry, I didn't explain this. So I'm using Ovid Medline because of my background, I tend to use this a lot. So my first concept is the setting, or population. That's Africa. You didn't see me type in all this because I'd already done it. So rather than just put in Africa, I've thought of other ways people would have labeled their titles. If someone decides to conduct a study in South Africa, the person will not necessarily put in Africa. The person can say South Africa, or in West Africa, they will be specific to West Africa. So that's why I've put all that here. I have Africa, or Northern, or South Africa, or Eastern Africa, so I've put all those possible ways Africa could be portrayed in a paper. If you were doing, this is just a basic thing. If you were doing a systematic review, this is not for a systematic review. This is just for, your normal literature search. You would even want to go further and put in the countries, okay? So we are not going in there. You could leave it here. Now let's go to the second concept. what was it again, Robert? Was it supplementation? So the example I had was to look at I was trying to find out which of these two interventions were most effective. So I think I looked at supplementation and fortification in Africa. That was the example that I had on my slide. So let's use supplementation. Again, because I tried this already.
It seems I got excited too early, but I don't seem to be able to see what you were doing.
You're not seeing it?
I'm not.
Yeah, we are not seeing anything. We only see the...
Oh, yes, now you're moving. Yeah.
You are now moving, yes.
You're now moving.
Okay. So you didn't see that bit on the Africa that I did?
We didn't see that, but I'm sure now we can see you doing stuff. So maybe as you move to your next set, it's going to be clear. Yeah.
Okay, so no, this is not the right one. I'm coming. Okay. It's gone again, right? It will come. Just hold on 1 second.
Yeah. I shouldn't be excited.
But what you can do is you can also go to the side and just go through, bring out your, so if you go to the university side and then you go to office and you can demonstrate it from there. So
just because of the time, I didn't let you guys see it. So I didn't let you see how I got to Ovid Medline, but apologies. I just went there behind the scenes. So I'm assuming that you can all get to Ovid Medline if you were doing it yourself. So I went through our university. Okay, so I did a first search, and sorry you didn't see that, but I only typed in Africa or northern or southern Africa, or this actually came up from Medline, because I ticked on include related terms. So when I put Africa, it just brought up these other ones. But if it doesn't, you need to enter it. So you put Africa or North Africa or South Africa or East Africa, all the ways that Africa can be portrayed in a research paper. That's what you do for your first concept. Now let's go to the second one. So supplementation. I have supplementation or food supplements. I hope you can still see. Can you see? Yeah, food supplements, or, just from the top of my head, for the sake of this exercise, folic acid, because I was thinking about women in hospital as well. So if you have any more words, just put them in. Use the or throughout, okay? I'll end here. So these three, give it a few seconds. Okay. It's gone beyond the few seconds that I talked about. Then our third concept could be, for the example that I had, fortification. So yeah, fortification or fortified foods, or if you have any other synonyms, you just add it onto it, and then you add it to your search. You could put in as many as you want. So this is the PICO section we are doing for those of you who said you didn't know what PICO was. Okay. If someone is seeing my slide, can you remind me what my fourth concept was? So I have the setting, which is Africa. I have supplementation. I have fortification. Can you see my slides, Sandra?
No, I can't see your slides.
Okay. Okay, let me just think of something. So what was I trying to look at? The effects of this on, if your outcome is malnutrition, you could put that as your fourth. Yeah, I think that's what I had. So malnutrition. Sorry? Someone said something. Malnutrition, or what are the synonyms? How is malnutrition expressed in papers? So how is it? I had underweight here. I had anemia. So think of, depending on what you are looking for. Think of stunting, wasting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the list can go on and on and on. Okay, so this is your first step. No, we've done the first step. So your second step, you do the searches individually for the key concepts. Okay, once you are done with this, we are ready to combine. Okay, we've done all the ors. We are now ready to combine it. Okay, so we know when you look at just the setting, you have so many papers. You look at supplementation, you have this it gives you an idea how much work has been done in these areas. So now we are ready to combine these 4 concepts because we are looking for papers that would have touched on malnutrition, fortification, supplementation, and Africa. Can I ask from the group, if I want to combine these 4, what Boolean operator, and Boolean operator is your or and, would you use? If you are trying to find out or find papers that have all these 4 concepts or touches on some of these concepts, would you use an or an and? What do people think? Because when we're looking at the synonyms, we used or. Now we are looking at combining everything. Should we say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4?
So there are loads of responses here on the chat.
Okay, what
and
are
all of them are saying use and.
Okay, and okay, so people get it now. Get it. So yeah. Usually, if you select it, you can also do it from here, but yeah, it's fine. 3 and 4. Okay, 1, 2, and 3 and 4. Papers could just be perfect, and if it's perfect, just go ahead and use these 2 papers. If you need more, you go back, change the search. Okay, changing the search means changing the words. Going to look for words that better capture what you are looking for. Okay, so this is, we don't have much time, but this is in brief how you go about your PICO search. If we were to have had 10,000 papers, which also happens, you could finish with a search and you have 10,000 papers. You can't read all those 10,000 papers, okay? So we call something limits. Once you do this search, you realize you have too many papers, you can put limits on it. What is limits? You can now decide, can you still see my screen, please?
Yes, Hiba, your screen is still live.
Come here and then select some of the stuff here. You can say that, okay, I'm going to limit it to papers that were published in the last 10 years. So you could say papers from 2014 to 2020. That is one way of limiting your search. Or you could also say, I'm only looking for papers that I can find the full text, because there are some references that you don't have the full text, or papers that are just in English. There are so many languages. You could limit it to so many things. In fact, there are additional limits down here that you can select. You could limit it to age group. You could limit it to, so many things. There are so many things that you can select to limit your search to fit what you are looking for. Okay, so you need to go, and it's similar for the databases. It's not the same. It's not the same interface for the different databases, but it's the same concept. So you need to go and look at whatever database you want to use for your searches, and then get familiar with what is there, play around with it, because you can never get it right. Even for experienced researchers who do systematic reviews, they have to go through this process over and over again before they finally get what would fit what they are going to use it for. Okay. Now, once you are done with that, where am I?
You need to save it.
Yes, I wanted to show them how to export. Where are my searches? Where's my... I'm trying to go back. Sandra, how do you go back from this limits page?
A good question. If you go back to that box limited search, is it?
Yes, click on
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Right. So assuming we have
because you limit and you got 0. So
yeah. So that was just an example. Okay. So assuming you have 100 papers or 5 or 10, or if these 2 papers were what you were looking for, what do you do with it? You could export it. So that's the next thing I wanted to talk about. I'll just use this. Okay. You need to save this to use it. Even if you can download it and read it, you might also want to save it to go back to it. So this is export. Can you see export here?
Yes.
You click on export here, it takes you here, and there are different formats. So you could decide to export it. So that's the next thing I wanted to touch on, to we call it reference manager. You know, how do you manage the references that you have? You could decide to take it to EndNote. I'm sure most of you have heard of EndNote. It's a place that you can store and manage your references. So you could just click on EndNote and export, and it will take you to EndNote if you have an account. So there's free version of EndNote. So you need to create an account first. You could also take it to, you know, reference manager, RefWork. There's so many ways in which you can export what you have searched for. Okay, right. I think I'll stop this now. Can you take me back to my slides, and then I conclude? So this was just a brief introduction to what we call the PICO section. Let me see what else I have on my, Robert, you need to share your slides.
Oh,
so that
okay.
I can, yeah. So once you are done with that, you export it, save it there, and then you can always go back to use your literature for whatever you're using it. Especially if you're doing a dissertation, it's important for you to save it, and then you can keep going back to it.
So this is really interesting, Hiba, and I was just wondering, because of the time that is not there, people really want to see this again, and maybe we probably will need to organize a proper training for literature searching, and then and how to save the literature and all those things. And
yes. If people are happy for us to do that, I mean, they can let us know, and we can plan something around this, and go into details on how to actually use different kinds of databases and how to save it. Yeah. Please, can we go on to my last slide before I...
Okay.
What was it? Let's see if I've touched on everything. Yeah, so that was it. You have to review your findings. That's what I explained to you. You look at what you have after executing your search. You may have to, most of it are not you have to go back and refine the search strategy, apply limits, which I already told you, and edit the search strategy, you know, and keep doing it until you save your search or export it to some sort of a reference manager. Okay. This is a manual way of doing it. I need to also state that, you know, as technology advances, there are now automated processes. I've never used the automated ones before. I'm happy with my manual one, but just to let you know, there are some automated ways of doing this. Okay. Yeah. Robert, I think I would end here. We don't have much time. So
yeah, thank you very much, Hiba. I think it's been very, very useful, and I know that a lot of people would probably love that particular part of this particular seminar than the rest. And I'm thinking that, yeah, we will try, because this is just for us to give you a flavor of what, you know, what you can expect. And if you want us to organize a proper training and take you through the different, because Hiba just used PICO, and there are different frameworks that you can use to organize your literature search and conduct literature search. If you want to do that, then we can take you through. Let's get up to the rest of the world, and not just, you know, stick to what we already know in our own corners. All right. So you have evidence. You've known the different types of evidence that you may need, and then you've searched for your evidence. You know, so you've searched for it. You've found what you want. You've saved it, and then you've downloaded it, and then probably now you want to use it. So how do you use it, or what do we use it for? So maybe sometimes you already know what you want to use it for before you even start, you know, searching for it. So maybe you want to use it to make a decision, maybe make informed decision at your work, or you want to use it to make academic argument. So we want to take you through some of the, maybe if there was time, I would have asked you, you know, what evidence is used for, but let's move on. So this slide summarizes what evidence can be used for. So you can use evidence to produce policy briefs. So when we do all the reviews and we do all the research and all that, you probably will want to produce some policy briefs that can be used by policymakers, okay? And that policy brief should normally be informed by evidence. Just don't produce a policy brief without evidence. So you can use policy brief to produce evidence. And sometimes reviews like the high-class evidence is normally what is recommended. But you may also want to use evidence to make an influence, to influence policymakers or influence users of a service, that what we are delivering is effective or is there. So you can use evidence to make that kind of influence. You can use evidence to engage government or your even partners you are working with in terms of advocacy. So you can advocate for a change in policy. Now we are having the National Health Insurance Scheme in Ghana, and then there's a new the NDC government is proposing a free primary health care. You can use evidence to demonstrate the need for that. Okay. So evidence can be used in various ways. And for those of you who are in academic field, you may want to use evidence to make, to support your dissertations, to write your academic articles for publications and all that. Or even for those of you who may be teaching, you can use evidence to communicate, or even running workshops and all that, you can do that. Press releases, evidence is important. Now, you know all that, and I think when Hiba did her search, I'm glad that there were 2 articles. So if you were just looking for a few papers to support, to draw evidence from, to support your argument, to maybe you are going on a radio discussion. These days, we don't see that people just go on radio discussion and make claims that, that may not be supported by any evidence. But you want to go on a radio discussion to make, to influence people, for example. And then you have to look for evidence. You have to, do these quick searches that Hiba has just done. Find the best possible evidence. I think when she did it, I saw in the first paper was a randomized control trial, which gives you some good evidence there. And you can talk with authority that there's evidence there. If it was a systematic review, that would even be better, because it's a collection of papers. And then these papers, the evidence you have collected, you synthesize them, and you can use that to make your argument on radio strongly. Okay, so now you're reading those papers. How do you now understand? I mean, we said that randomized control trials are, some of the best evidence that you can find. But you take a randomized control trial and you want to read it and then critique it. So critiquing the evidence. There are key elements that you have to be looking at when you are reading that. The relevance of the evidence that is in that paper. Is it relevant to what you are trying to say, or what the discussion you want to make, or the decisions you want to make? Is this evidence relevant to that? Okay, so that's the first thing. Then you think about credibility of the report, the credibility of the research, the credibility of the findings of that paper. Okay, how credible or trustworthy is the evidence or is the findings in this paper? Okay, so you'll be thinking about it. If you are a researcher, you can easily tell in terms of the design, in terms of the way they controlled when they were collecting data and all that. You can easily tell that there are issues with the way they have conducted things. If you are not a researcher, you might not be able to tell, so you just pull out the evidence. There are ways to critique credibility of a paper, and we won't touch that today, because that's using the right tools to be able to do the critique. But when you are just reading to go and go and do a discussion somewhere, or go to a meeting where there are high-profile people and they expect you as a researcher to come and talk, you may just be looking at some of these things quickly to do that. But be looking at bias in the way they report the findings. Sometimes some researchers are sponsored by, organizations that influence the findings. So you have to be looking at bias in the way they report it. You have to be looking at uncertainties in the paper. So when you are reading, look at it. Is there any consensus being drawn? Or even if you read 2 or 3 papers and you compare the evidence and see whether one is saying, making some good argument, another one is being biased towards what they were expected to explore. Then the rigor of it. So these are things that you should be looking at quickly when you are reading a paper, okay? And that's what I wanted to talk about.
Robert, let me just add a few things. So even if
Yes.
you're an experienced researcher and you're a student, master student, PhD student, you would have taken a module on, research methods. So you need to apply your knowledge and understanding of research designs whilst you're reading your paper. A thing as simple as, does the paper have a clearly stated objective or aim? Even that is one of the ways, you start from there. If a paper doesn't have a clearly stated aim, how do they come by their findings? So things as little as that are, even if a paper just says, oh, we are going to do this and it's not clear. So what question are they, your question is not clear, it's not structured, it's not smart. What are they trying to answer? Okay, so you need to think, always apply your knowledge from research designs, research methods, to the paper that you are reading. And quickly, by looking at some of those things, you can easily tell that, this paper is not of a high quality, or it is. Sometimes other things has to do with methodology, so the designs that Robert talked about, there are certain questions that should be answered with a particular design. Okay, so if you're reading a paper and then people are using designs that, these days everyone wants to do research, and sometimes, people are just rushing to do anything. Okay, so if you understand research designs, research methodologies, you know what kinds of designs should go with which kinds of questions. And then that would also help you to know that this paper is of high quality or not. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for chipping in. And I think I'll just also add that probably in addition to what Hiba has just said, you'll probably be looking at even the recruitment strategy of this paper, the data collected, the data analysis. Did they control for confounding factors? For example, I mean, we attended a conference where somebody made a presentation and then they asked the person a question and he said, because of, they didn't have enough time to be able to control for confounding factors. So you just know that the findings are biased there, okay? So sometimes, yes, people, because of time, people are unable to do rigorous analysis. And the person acknowledged that they could have done more analysis, but because of time, they couldn't do that. And I think this is a very legitimate limitation of that study that the person acknowledged. So things like this, when you are reading, you have to be paying attention to it. Maybe they could have used random sampling, and they didn't use random sampling. They used different forms of sampling that probably did not. So when you are reading, think about all these things, and then.
Robert, can I add? Or even if they did use random sampling, they need to have shown us how they went about it. You cannot just say, I did random sampling. How did you go about it? Okay, so sometimes they would still tell you, we did this A, B, C, and D, but then they don't tell you how. We cannot just take your words for it. Okay, so it's not just about stating it. And I also wanted to add that it is important, you are going to be the judge of it. So it's important that you, the one reading, understands these things, because if you don't understand it, you will not be able to judge. You need to understand these things before you are able to judge that a paper is of a good quality or not.
Okay. So I mean, this is the last slide, and I just, as I said, we are not going to take you through the different critique tools, the tools that you can use to critique, but they are here. There are tools for critiquing quantitative specific evidence. There are tools for critiquing qualitative specific evidence. There are also tools that are used for mixed method, where you have combined both qualitative and quantitative data. And there are tools that are used in critiquing systematic reviews. Even though we said that systematic reviews and meta-analysis are the best forms of evidence, you still need to critique it. Because the process, like when she was doing the searches, if you don't do the searches well, you probably will bias the findings. So some of these things you have to critique the paper, and there are checklists here that are developed by various experts that can help us to be able to do a very good critique of a paper and come out and say, well, you can grade the evidence and say, out of the 20 studies that I have looked at, only 2 of them have strong evidence, or the evidence is stronger in these 2 papers compared to the rest because of the criteria you have put there. Okay, so so this is in summary what we wanted to talk to you briefly about. If you have questions, we are happy to take them.
Whilst you are typing in your questions, can I just ask, because I did a poll, for people who didn't have any knowledge about PICO, do you kind of have a basic understanding? If you do have a basic understanding, can you put 1 in the chat box for me? If you still didn't get anything, it's fine. Put a 0 in there for me. It's just so that we know. If you have at least a basic understanding of PICO and you can now start thinking about your own research question, can you put in a 1? If you didn't, put in a 0. That is still okay for us to know for next time.
It's good if you really ask this, because someone already was requesting for his initial response to be upgraded.
Okay.
No knowledge to now actually very good knowledge.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Okay, good.
And in
another session will be great. Okay.
And in the chat box, I think everyone who has typed has said that yes, it's increased to the top level. They now feel they've got good knowledge of the process. There is a request for another session from response right now. Yeah, a session. I'm guessing that's on searching the literature.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for the feedback. I have to add that it takes practice. I mean, even for all of us, sometimes we don't get it right when we are doing searches. So, you just have to keep doing it, until you become a bit conversant with the process. But it's not a 1 day and 1 hour session that's going to make you get up there. Yeah.
The final word probably I want to say from my side is that, you cannot get funding. If you are a researcher these days, you cannot get funding if you don't demonstrate that there's no evidence out there. And you cannot just demonstrate that there's no evidence out there by just Googling and looking for papers. You have to systematically go through the process and pull out all the evidence that is in the topic that you are trying to apply the funding for, and demonstrate that this is what the evidence is, this is where the strength is, this is where the weaknesses is, and that I'm going to address these weaknesses before you can be funded. So if you cannot demonstrate this, you can't get funding. And that, I think this is the problem with most of academic researchers, that we don't seem to understand how to go about these things. And that is the reason why we are organizing things like this. It is just a series of them. We will try and as much as possible continue to do this based on maybe your request. We'll look at the request for session proper and then probably just focus on that. Okay?
Right. Sorry, can I just say something? So on our list of topics, so someone was also asking on how to structure a systematic review question. We have one of the topics to be choosing a research question, and so that is something we have already planned to do. So just to answer to Mutun, someone who asked the question, but that is coming. We will just look out for the flyers on our Facebook page and your emails. We'll be sending it to you, details on the next sessions. Okay.
Okay, so I would probably like to close the session if you haven't got questions. And maybe by my conclusion, I would want to say that thank you all for making time to attend, even though I know that most of you are doing this because you want to enhance your knowledge. But it is also good for us to know that there are people out there who really want us to do what we are doing. And you can go to our probably Facebook or YouTube channels and probably view. I mean, I know Hiba has been doing a lot of short videos on dietary eating, dietary patterns, eating behaviors, and all that. You can go there and then you can these are all forms of evidence, to be honest. You can go there and then review them and leave some feedback. I know that you are sending us feedback, but leave some feedback so that we know what we are doing right and what we are not doing right, so we can improve. And I said earlier on that if you are a researcher or a professional that you think that you can join us, let us know. Just send an email and then we'll get you on board. The agenda is to bridge the gap between the global north and the global south, so that we can all move on the same straight line and not. I mean, I know that some of you have done your master's and PhD here, and you've gone back to your countries where there's very limited, all these databases we are talking about, there are some universities that do not have it. It's not your fault. So it's not your fault that you have to rely on Google. Maybe we'll try, and when we are doing the literature searching, Google, there are different ways to use Google and not just putting the question and Googling it. There's also a different way to search in Google and still do it in a systematic way. And then we'll probably add that to that session. So thank you all for coming. Anybody who has any last word that they want to say, Hiba and Sanda, and we can close.
Sanda, you go.
Ladies first, Hiba.
No, I was just going to say, Robert, you said it all. So thank you so much for coming. And, you know, we're glad that we already have some feedback that this has been useful. This is what we want to do. So we are happy that you've learned something. Just as Robert said, leave comments on, you know, we're going to put this on a YouTube link, maybe in the coming days. If you have any feedback, leave it there. And just look out for the next sessions. Okay. You could also respond to the emails when you have suggestions and anything to the emails that we send to you. Just tell us whatever you think, your request, and let's just keep in touch and help. We are trying to give back to the community. So meet us halfway by telling us what you think. Yeah.
All right. Yes. All I'm going to say is, well, while monitoring the chat box, there's been several questions. Some of them being recommendations on data, some of the relevant databases for specific subject areas. There are loads of requests for a more detailed database searches. So, I mean, all these chats will be there for us to review and come back to you. All I've got to say, it's been incredibly useful. You know, having you guys around, it's great for, you know, in terms of sharing your experiences. And in terms of your contributions, it's absolutely valuable. We hope to see you guys again. You know, in all of our sessions, do spread the word to your friends and your contacts. And we really enjoy working with you. Just what Robert said about the databases, that yes, it's not your fault. We hope universities in Africa, you know, wherever, and in developing countries would stop spending money on those luxurious cars and meetings and buy databases for students to use. So those of you who, you know, have any influence, whether it's through the student union, please, you know, this is a time to advocate for your universities to purchase these databases. They don't cost more than the V8s that they drive. They don't even cost up to the tie of those V8s that they drive or the allowances that they get for their team meetings. So please use your student union, put pressure on the universities, buy this database. It will serve over 50,000 students if you just sacrifice, you know, just one luxurious venture for some of these things. So nice having you guys, and I look forward to seeing you guys in our future sessions.
Thank you. We'll share the recording with you.